What it do, niggas?
Hola.
I just want y'all to know that Geechee is so dramatic, and the one time that he was on time, he texting us talking about, "Are y'all alive?"
Actually, I'm actually always on time, and y'all always coming in at the last minute.
It's not true.
In
I
fact,
was literally here before everybody last Friday.
I don't remember that.
I remember it very clearly.
In fact, one of our guests is earlier than both you and John. You feel me?
That ain't got nothing to do with me.
You know, but
I'm only responsible for myself and my dog.
Anyway, welcome to the Remix Morning Show. ETI, Miss Amber, and then Lorick will be coming in soon. You know,
never on time.
No, we do in Miami, and then we have two special guests to join us. There go one of our other hosts.
This nigga got a do-rag on.
Hey man, listen.
My God.
Come as you are.
Good morning.
As you
as well.
Yeah, you know, I don't think she have any like empathy, sympathy, or nothing. Like she, know what happened this morning. Man, how you doing? Nothing like that.
I don't have any sympathy. No, I don't have any sympathy for anybody. You motherfuckers didn't check on me. Nobody asked me how I was.
I thought you're supposed to be a organizer African who trying to get the work done. So you gotta love people.
I just got here.
Right. And you shots fired already? That's crazy, bro.
Yeah, time to ask. What it do, niggas?
I'm sure I already did that part. You was late. You.
How you doing? Morning.
I'm all right.
Cool.
Listen, in a couple minutes, probably gonna get the people like 8:15, but we're gonna have two guests on who are two incredible participants who will be a part of our event at Morehouse next week. We'll be talking about some beneath the mountain passages and work. Anti-Prison Reader by Jennifer Black and Mumia. I think both of my co-hosts has been prepared. They've been reading a little bit, so got an interesting.
I just want y'all to know that Geechee be assigned in 8 chapters 2 days before you're supposed to talk about it. It was 75 pages,
Lord.
And we're gonna discuss.
It wasn't that much. It wasn't that much. It was
Josh and Geechee on this. They're really in the same clique because I don't know why I be doing this.
Why are you so dramatic, bro? You just said I was dramatic, and then here go all your drama.
I'm just being honest.
I enjoyed it. It was good. That was a good, healthy amount of reading, I think, personally.
They were good reads. They were long, but they were good reads.
Yeah, they were pretty. Yeah, but it was also very readable, I guess, is the way I would say it. Like everyone was talking very direct in the writing. And it's next style, so you get different people's writing styles. I appreciated that. It wasn't like I was just stuck reading the same writer for a really, really long time. Geechee, did you want to share the particular passages we read?
Yeah. So we so basically let me lay this out first. So at the event we have Jennifer Black will be in the space, and obviously Mumia's voice and energy will be in the space as well. But the book is laid out, and it starts with Ona, somebody that George Washington and his wife owned or captured and kept in prison, and she got free. And when she was finally gone, they tried to write a letter and say, "Hey, you should come back." And she wrote her letter. She's like, "Nah, bro, I'm not coming back." And there's Nat Turner and John Brown and just a list of people who have been writing about U.S. carceral projects. And there's like, I don't know, 60 different contributions. And we thought it wise to go over a few. And we're not going to, so during the event, each of the participants will read passage that stuck out to them and kind of talk more about it. And all the people that they select, we're not going to talk about those today. We're going to talk about some other things that we've read. And so this time we're going to be talking about Eugene Debs' letter, and this is his letter from prison. Angelo Herndon, Safir Ness. Some of y'all might not have heard of that person. And then we also supposed to talk a little bit about Momia's his contribution to it. So he edited, and he also has a letter. And so we'll be talking through those in our reflections. If you are kind and you contribute well in the chat, I might send you a PDF copy. I might, maybe possible, but not. Yeah. So we'll be talking about those 4 contributions from the book and share our reflections. But then that'll be coming up. But before we get to that, anything that y'all been doing the past week? How y'all feel?
Yeah, Lark, what have you been doing?
I have some more questions about the book, but I have been good. I wanted to. I'm out of town, but in Miami, some cool things are going down. So Dr. Layla,
where you at?
Around in places. No, I'm in Chi-Town. I'm just playing. Chicago.
For a conference?
For some family.
Oh.
But yeah. So what was I gonna say? Dr. Layla Brown of Black Liberation Media, also a professor, is coming to FIU and speaking on Pan Africanism, which is really dope. So that'll be today. If you can take the time off and get there, that'd be really cool. But specifically speaking about Venezuela, Pan Africanism, all those great things. And so the last time I saw someone talk about Pan Africanism at FIU, it was Kwame Ture before I was born. So pretty cool to have that happening in 2025. And then after that, we're also having a screening of Soundtrack to a Coup. So if you don't follow Black Men Build Miami, check us out. That's going to be at the Citadel, made at the Citadel in Miami. So Black Men Build Miami, follow it out. Dr. Layla and Soundtrack to a Coup tonight. And I'm missing it, but sending my love.
I mean, but you knew ahead of time you was gonna miss it when you made them travel plans.
No, I didn't actually. The plans were before this. Otherwise, I would be at this.
I thought you was gonna say somebody died and it was spur of the moment.
Oh no, it's not. I would have told you beforehand. I wouldn't set you up like that.
That works.
We're good. We're good.
What about you, Amber? What you been? Who nerves you been?
You said who? What?
My bad. I didn't mean to say that part. How have you been, Amber? I said, who had the nerves to make you feel any type of way? And that's what
I
don't know, but I got starter locks yesterday.
I was gonna say the hair looks great.
Oh, let me get that close up short. Wait, that's the wrong mouth. My bad.
Don't do a close up. I'm lying. I'm sorry. Don't do a close up. They're just twists.
Oh.
I'm just fucking with you. No, I've been doing regular organizing shit. I almost had my 13th reason yesterday, but I made it. So good. If anybody's wondering what my 13th reason was going to be, it was Geechee in the middle of the day sending us 3 passages to read. And then a few hours later, sending another one. And it almost took me out.
Amber, you know you be reading a lot, so don't start.
I do read a lot, but I'm also doing a lot right now. So
just a little bit of homework. Wasn't that crazy?
It wasn't a little bit of homework. It was about 45 pages.
Healthy.
That was light work.
It was 4 essays.
It was. I had to wake up early to finish them.
Yeah, like a day before. Like, come on now. If you had said this on Monday, okay, cool. I could have fit this in. I'm running a rapid response hotline, a ride share program, posting rapid response alerts on Instagram and Facebook, going to my regular job, teaching kids about know your rights information, training folks on civil disobedience. I don't got time to do all this shit. And then I told Geechee that, y'all. I just want you to know I told Geechee that, y'all, and he said, "You a good organizer, aren't you? What is wrong with you?"
Right. He's right.
No.
Life.
I was me like that girl on Netflix without them tapes. I wish I had time to record some. I would have been like,
it's all life.
What happens?
You never seen that, Lori?
What?
13th Reason?
Oh no, I never saw 13 Reasons Why. I know of it. Students used to.
When she was talking about like all her different reasons to just end it all, and then she talked about a 13th reason. That's what the joke was. The joke was like,
no, I get I get the 13th reason thing. Why are there multiple seasons of that show if it's only one? Like, does it reset does someone else have a 13th
She
reason?
had 13 tapes, and it all was reasons why. Like, it was the story telling why, like, she basically ended it all,
right?
And it went from tape 1 to 13, and 13 was like her 13th reason why. So I just be using it as a little jokey joke because I can't say the other word on the internet. But it was a jokey joke, you guys.
No, I get it. I know you're okay. We don't got to send anyone over to do a wellness check. But,
and if you send somebody over, they might get shot. So I wouldn't do that either.
That'd be a fun reversal for the people who usually do wellness checks. My question is, why are there multiple seasons of the show? Like, are you seeing the tapes over multiple seasons? Because doesn't it get resolved once you know?
There's only 2 seasons, I think. I think it's just one, actually. 1 or 2.
Oh, it's only one. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I thought I saw that. Let me look this up. Are there's some season 4 on here.
There's 4?
There's 4 seasons. Yeah. See, Netflix has to milk it. That's the whole thing.
I ain't seen it all then.
Yeah.
I got to the part where she was talking about her 13th reason, and I was like, all right, I'm good. Because I don't care about white people drama enough to like keep watching it. Oh, speaking of white people drama though, I was training some kids yesterday at this college here, Rhodes. And it's like a liberal arts school, whatever, and they want to learn about like policy and organizing and stuff like that. And this girl asked me, like, what did I think was the reason why white people at the No Kings protest, weren't really doing, civil disobedience or really doing much, like, what do I think it is? It's like holding them up. And I was like, I don't know. Go ask the white people. Why would I know that? And then they ain't ask no stupid shit like that again. So hopefully they learned. Because why would I know those things? Who do I look like? I'm black.
The white
in a majority black city. And then I was like, realistically, this the most I've ever been around white people, if we be honest, is when I come to Rhodes. I'm just saying. But I think she is gonna ask them. So I think that's what matters, is that she gonna get her question answered and figure out what that's all about.
No.
But yeah, I had a busy week. Been doing a lot of things. And yeah, I feel like the whole federal occupation thing is a lot heavier than a lot of people thought it was going to be. And I think it's causing a lot of like emotional strain on people, and people are just trying to figure out how to manage it. I also think that like Memphis is giving like a tale of two cities right now, because there's like white people in the suburban areas that don't even know that the federal agents are here because they literally are nowhere near their neighborhoods. And so they're like confused about what we're talking about. We're like, they're flooding the streets or in these areas. They're like, I don't even see what you're talking about, which also proves the racial profiling argument even more, because they really don't see them. Like, they literally are nowhere near their communities.
Yeah.
But they pulling niggas over every 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I honestly didn't even know it was like that until the students were talking about it yesterday. They were like, once they get to North Parkway, close to Rhodes, they don't see them no more.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, there's a reason for that. Geechee was typing loud. I agree, Stephen.
Shout out, I think Justin, the camera maybe, but shout out our remix glossary, because in it, when we talk about abolition in that Project Nia video in the resources tab, that's one of the first things they mention, actually, is that white people very rarely have contact with the police. So all they have is often a example off of television or something like that, Law and Order, all of those things about it. And yeah, it makes perfect sense, right? So you're thinking about something that you have no experience with. Obviously, you're going to have some wonky conclusions, and that tends to be, what you're seeing. But it is interesting though, because as we always point out, like this is technically in people's backyard, right? Like all they got to do is look. But yeah,
Yeah.
So I'm
yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask why you picked these four of all the amazing ones in the book for us to focus on. But
Okay. So I didn't pick. We didn't pick the ones that that each participant is gonna actually talk about during our event. So there's four participants, and they all four will read a passage, and we just decided to talk about uh, other things that they've read. And so these are ones that Tara and Mackenzie has been reading also. And so, yeah, just wanted to talk about some ones that we're not going to talk about. So it wasn't me picking them. So, but because you made that dope caveat, we're going to take a break and then we're going to bring our guest. Welcome back to Remix Morning Show here with Lorik, Geechee, and Amber, and we're joined by two guests, Professor Tara and the amazing Mackenzie. How y'all doing? And you can introduce yourself. Where you from? I know we have y'all in the what you call them? AUC.
Yeah.
But yeah, y'all go introduce yourself.
I'll defer to Mackenzie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mackenzie. I'm a senior health science major at Spelman. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Peace, everybody. I'm Dr. Tara Taylor, Assistant Professor of Sociology here at Morehouse College. Also happy to be here. Graduate of Howard University, still within the HBCU family. You know.
So listen, we appreciate y'all coming through. We as Amber cursed me out like 16 times because I had her reading when she wanted to read, but I'm appreciative that we all are somewhat prepared for the conversation. So initially, maybe let's just start with some thoughts and reflections of the book in general. Like we've been engaging it a little bit, and yeah, I'm wondering what y'all think, and then we'll start with the guests and then an overview of the passages that y'all read as well, Amber. But yeah, what are some initial thoughts around how you've been engaging the book of Beneath the Mountain edited by Jennifer Black and Mamiya?
You know what's so interesting is like how timely it is. And particularly timely for, a host of folks who are now being introduced to like abolition movement, folks who are being introduced to like systemic oppression and institutional discrimination. And I'm speaking that way because, I'm an educator. And so, one of the things that, I've seen since I've been teaching since 2015 is the ways in which young people are distanced from these type of discriminations and these understandings. And so oftentimes you might find the students who are like interested in Black studies, who are particularly interested in these specific topics, grasping for it. But then like, in a general sociology class or intro to sociology class or social problems class, it's like pulling teeth to try to get them to understand systemic oppression, or also them bridging the gap between what they see as this far distant past and what's happening now. And right now, these kids, they are trying to make sense of what they are seeing and what they have since been seeing. Many of them, I think, George Floyd was where they kind of really kind of bit their teeth on seeing it. Some of us, we're older, so we even know like Tamir Rice and some of the instances, like even like Amadou Diallo. But for many of them, this is the first time where they're having to make sense of this. And then particularly, them some of my students, they have family members who have been incarcerated, and they've been sold these kind of narratives like, just, work hard and you can avoid this. And now they're seeing like, oh, this is systemic, this is institutional. They're trying to understand the prison industrial complex, they're trying to understand the medical industrial complex. So I'm like, this book is very, very timely, because it gives like these narratives, historical narratives that are back in the day, and then up front, and you can see like the same thing happen in the same conversation. So that was like my impression of it. Like, I think it's dynamic for those of us who are teaching, but also for the general public, and then it kind of implores you to go back and read like Soledad Brothers. It implores you to go back and read some of the other things that Mumia has kind of written. So it's timely.
Kenzie? Any like
Yeah,
over? Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I think it might have been delayed, but go ahead, Mackenzie. You got it.
Oh, I was just going to say I echo a lot of the same sentiments. Like, I think the book is really useful for me as a student who, like Dr. Taylor was saying, like, kind of my first entry into thinking about abolition is George Floyd and everything in 2020. So the book is, in my opinion, very readable for just a general kind of population, like not even necessarily a college educated, but it gives you a lot of different perspectives. It's a lot of different contributors, so you can kind of read about it from different vantage points. And one of my favorite parts about it is the discussion of labor, like thinking about prison as also a class issue and a capitalist issue, and just seeing all of that intersection. So I think that it's really productive for that too.
Amber, any initial reflections in the north?
I agree with Lori's comments earlier about the different voices. I like that. Usually, I don't really like essay type of books, like from different authors, unless they're like longer. Like, how they have like those poem collection books and shit. I hate those. But like essays, I feel like you get more depth, because I don't like feeling like I'm hanging on like a cliff. And I feel like all the stories came together, like they had a beginning and an ending, and they taught something or you learned something that was really good. So I like that part. I didn't feel like I was like leaving and wanting more information. Like, I felt fulfilled and like I understood what they were trying to explain. So I like that part.
Can y'all hear me? Also, I changed my. Okay, cool. Really appreciated the book. Education wise, pedagogically, I liked the summaries at the beginning of every single excerpt to explain who this person was and contextualize their contribution. I think that's just a great practice. So that made it really easy for me to understand the importance of each of those things. And then, yeah, all of these are resources, excellent resources. I was really drawn to Angelo's story. Right now in Blackmanville, we've been engaged in some deeper PE internally, and looking at Asada's Women in Prison, How It Is With Us recently. So to see that appear here was excellent. To see Malcolm appear here was excellent. But just to see how all of these people are in conversation with each other was the best part to me. I also say you hear the words material conditions a lot in our, space. And I think sometimes it can feel abstract to people, ironically, even though the words themselves mean material conditions. But everything in this book, to me, is clear about what people mean when they say material conditions. Every single one of these people knows themselves, their life, the thing that's oppressing them, like in intimate detail. So that was important to me.
When is Black Men Bill not engaged in deep study?
Hey, I
We
appreciate
get on
that.
here every week and be like, we're engaged in some deep study
High
right now. They're
praise.
always in deep study.
High praise. But Amber, when we got those page numbers you were complaining about, and people working and doing the organizing, well, when we telling you got a certain page count, that's what I mean about the deeper study, where people like, oh, there's a lot of pages here. So
I think there's a difference between someone telling you about something the day before and someone telling you something at the beginning of the week.
that's true. All right, but to keep us moving.
Tara, can you hear the rest of us?
I can hear everybody, but Lord, I
Uh-oh.
could not hear anything. That I could see his mouth moving. I could tell that you guys could hear him, but I couldn't hear anything.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know.
What's going
Oh,
on.
that's wild. Okay.
Yeah, like I can't hear anything you're saying.
Wow.
Discrimination.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll have to figure out how to maneuver that. Maybe Lord can jump out and jump back in and see if it helps.
Can you hear me
Lord,
now?
Oh, maybe can you hear her now? Good.
Tara, can you hear me now?
Lord, can you speak? No, I can
I'm
hear
speaking.
everybody else. Yeah, Lord.
That's
is like-
crazy. I'm gonna jump out and come back because I don't know if anyone else can hear me in the chat.
Mackenzie, can you hear Lord?
We can hear you.
Mackenzie, can you hear?
Mackenzie's frozen.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. Okay, it's all sorts of tech difficulties.
Okay, sorry for the
I'm gonna hop out and hop back in
Okay.
just to see if that works.
Yeah. One of the things that was interesting to me as and apart from the book, I did really love the book. Anybody who take medicine or herbal medicine, if you read the book with no THC, it makes you feel like you're sitting with the people who write. But when I was canvassing on the campuses, I don't think there was one student that knew about Mumia. And there actually wasn't really professors who know about Mumia. They knew about the Move movement. One of them was like, "Oh, I know about Move," and I'm like, "Oh, wow." And so that actually was a particular type of feeling. So I do think it's relevant, and I'm actually really looking forward to the conversation. And in fact, when I was sitting down with Mackenzie, I was really inspired, and just know that there are some solid churn of students on that campus, on those campuses, and so I think they can turn it around and get people back into sober thoughts. But I'm gonna let Amber or Laura pick which one of the passages we want to go to and start to discuss some of our notes and thoughts. So who should we go to first between the four?
Y'all want to get the Great White out the way? Y'all want to get my boy Gene out the way?
Wait, you said the Great White? Is he greater than John?
I don't think so. Not on race.
Because John in there too now. No, let's go to Debs.
No,
So
I'm just playing. But it was excellent. Yeah, we could start with Eugene Debs. I thought his piece was interesting to hear how communist thought has developed over time. I really think of Angela Davis's "Our Prisons Obsolete" as like a entryway for a lot of people. So to see her analysis kind of projected back in time and from a white man is always going to be really powerful. So I like that one. But thoughts y'all had on that particular entry?
Tara, you want to start? I know.
Yeah. Y'all have to excuse me. I try not to like show up as a professor in every space. So I'm like, that's why I kind of like hold back. I don't want to like make my voice the dominant voice. But similar to you, yeah, Lork, I was like, the idea, like, kind of like speaking about in essence, the prison industrial complex before it was a term, and like breaking down like these things that we are like hearing now. And what's crazy to me is that people like, Angela Davis and folks who are like abolitionists, people are just like, feels like this is so radical and so new. And what is she talking about? But like the idea, like, 126 years prior, someone was saying this, and that even before him, there were folks who were saying it and were also like breaking down the analysis. Right. So it's like, kind of like almost like nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun type of thing. But like also the fact that we see, like, you have to be extreme and have this kind of abolitionist mindset, or otherwise it will be another 126 years and someone will be saying the same thing and like turning it over like it's brand new. And literally he was talking about like very early, even in Europe, the establishment of like prisons, and then like how quickly it turned into this carceral state and turned into this profit and then this kind of dehumanization, and then like them predicting like what we're having now, right? And so and I don't want to jump the gun on the other story, but like literally the idea that it turned into like, I guess they were trying to initially, he starts off by kind of like speaking to this conference where they're trying to say like, what is the impact of prisons on industry and trade? And he was like, nah, let's break this down. It's the capitalist system that has created all of these inequities for everybody, including the prisons, right? So like, let's not kind of like mix this up and put the horse before the cart. So I like that, because I think that's the thing that we're still dealing with right now, that people are kind of like wrestling with these ideas, and it's like they already predicted it, they already discussed it way back when, and the reason why it still exists now is because they didn't resolve it then, right? So yeah, I was particularly impressed with this one as well.
Yeah, there was a quote that I tested out on social media after reading from here, and this is page 66, 67. And Deb says, just as feudalism developed capitalism and then disappeared, so capitalism is now developing socialism. And when the new social system has been completely evolved, the last vestiges of capitalism will fade into history. And I wrote just that. I said, how would you respond to this? Socialism is developing. I'm sorry, capitalism is developing socialism. And a few people got it, but then people were like, well, no. And then I guess more people were talking about like, well, the conditions that capitalism creates socialism. So yeah, I'm curious if y'all have some thoughts of that, or even that passage resonated.
I mean, for me, immediately it's Marx, right? Marx's historical materialism and his idea that basically this evolution is supposed to have, because of like history basically progresses and the economic systems progress because of conflict. And then I think like he built on Hegel said that history is ideas progressing, but then he was like, no, it's this kind of struggle between these kind of capitalists, these interests. And so what happens is that we go from the feudalism to the industrialization, and then eventually the capitalism that we see. And then ultimately it's supposed to be like socialism, communism. So that was the thing that I picked up on. And so it's like also the idea like, oh, folks was Marxist, like building on Marx's ideas back then. But it's like just these understandings, like even whether or not you're following a particular political thought, it's just like people being critical and thinking about the conditions and being able to also kind of predict what's next. And I kind of still believe that socialism could be the next step, but I think in capitalism they're very smart with regards to delaying that kind of next step in history,
I thought the essay was interesting. I didn't like it more than I liked the other ones. I felt like there was a lot of academic speak, and I'm not really drawn to that as much. But I did think the topic was interesting because I agree that what he was talking about, like the ideas of capitalism, Marxism, all that stuff, I saw a lot of that in Red Dreams for Black Liberation by Robin D.G. Kelley. Been reading it for this history of social movements class I'm taking at this university right now. And what he was saying about the way those systems like work and suppress things also made me think about James's comment when he was saying our Black radical tradition is suppressed intentionally. And then when I was reading the Robin D.G. Kelley essay, and I read the Negro Question, Red Dreams of Black Liberation, and he was talking about like challenging the popular narrative around like what the civil rights movement was and like the purpose of being included in this system when you have all these communist folks who are like, no, that's actually not what we want at all. This is the things we really want. And you had Claudia Jones and W.E.B. Du Bois who are like really pushing back against that and saying like, we don't actually want access to American democracy, and like pushing for these like communist ideals. And we never hear about anything like that unless you're like reading something like what I was reading by Robert D.G. Kelley. Like I had never heard of those things. And I ended up reading like more stuff that he's written. I've read one book that he wrote, but I ended up reading like more stuff that he's written after reading that and writing this essay about it, because we were like really trying to examine like how those red traditions or whatever of communism like became so suppressed, and like how they were able to use that in strategy over time. And when I think about what Tara was saying about capitalism and like how they eventually let you get to something, but it takes so many years, that's kind of what we saw in the essay. Like, right, like they were able to embed these rare traditions, quote unquote, into the study and the practice they were doing, but it took a very long time for people to do those things. And then after years, you have like the Black Panthers coming in and bringing in some of those ideals, but it took a really long time. And I was just thinking about how, like, what could change that? Like, what could make this a quicker process? Because I think that's also how I think about my own organizing, is that I hate how things take so long. And I refuse to believe, like, when people say, well, government takes a long time, or things take time in government, like, to move. I just don't believe that. Like, I believe in challenging that, because that only upholds progress for people who really need it, for poor working class Black people. The other folks are doing fine. They don't need these changes. But like the people who will really be impacted, they need the changes immediately. And I thought about that when I was writing this essay about the Black Power movement, and this essay from Robert D.G. Kelly. And I thought about that when I was reading the Eugene Dobbs story, or Eugene Dobbs essay, and like what he was trying to get across. And I thought that what he was trying to get across made sense. I just didn't like that. I don't like we use like a lot of academic speak. I didn't like it that much in the Kelly thing either.
I hope maybe, even if we don't do it now, but I hope we can like flesh that out a little bit, because I saw in the chat and I agree. Debs definitely didn't go to college, and Malcolm didn't either. But whenever
I don't think you have to go to college to speak in that.
I know, but what I'm saying is, like, because guys, when we say academic, I think there's ways we use words, and there's ways we try to express ourselves, and I don't think. Yeah, I don't know. I just think there's something in that conversation, and maybe I understand what you're saying.
Especially, can't read stuff from academics or read stuff from folks who have studied and use similar words and phrasing as them and not have gone to college at all. I know lots of folks who do that, who have never been to college, but still speak in a way that isn't as easily understandable to average folks. And then they're able to change their language. I think people can do that. But I'm not saying that I didn't, like, I don't think that's a big, huge thing from the essay. I just thought it was a little annoying, but I still thought it was a good essay.
No, I
not better than the other ones, though.
I think I get. I mean, I get what you're saying, because I know there's like as people say, people talk philosophically and all these other things, but let me do context before we get into Lawrence and Mackenzie. So Eugene Debs wrote this prison labor and effect on industry and trade in 1899, and Debs lived from 1855 to 1926. So just for some chronological context, but go ahead, Lori, and then Mackenzie.
I was going to let Mackenzie, because I know there was a tech with you earlier, so I want to hear from you.
Oh yes, sorry about that. My thoughts on this essay, like, I definitely agree with some of the other comments that have already been made, but I particularly like how Debs points to capitalism as the justification for the prison labor in general. And I think that it gave me a little context for, like, we're thinking about prison labor, we understand that this is because it's easy to have this free labor and we can use convicts in this way. But I don't think that people think about it necessarily as tied to capitalism, or at least I didn't. And it illuminates, like, particularly because I was thinking about this in the South, like where you have chain gangs and people that are literally like on fields, tilling the land, producing things. Like in my section about the Free Alabama movement, like they're talking a lot about the actual like manual labor that people are doing. And I don't think that when I thought about that, or when I saw pictures of people doing these kinds of things, that you immediately think like, oh, this is working class problems, that this is, I think like the conversation of capitalism descending to socialism and communism feels like it's like working class conversation, and prisoners don't seem to be included in that. So I kind of like that the essay thinks about convict leasing and prison labor as something that's related to the economic system, but it also kind of gives an explanation for what we should do next, or at least gestures towards that, and thinking that in order to like untie ourselves from the need of prison labor, we must also untie ourselves from capitalism fundamentally, because of course this kind of like the most kind of exploitative labor would be highly rewarded under capitalism, and there's never going to be any incentive under this economic system to like get rid of it. Of course they're going to want to keep going, and we know that it's descended from slavery, but like when you really think about what that means for the economics of it, like private prisons are booming, and that's intentional, that's by design, and they're not going to stop because they're making an incredible profit off of exploiting the labor from these people. So I think like when you situate it better in that ideological commentary, it just made it a little more clear to me, like some of the ways that maybe I wasn't thinking about it before, and what we can do about getting rid of prison labor altogether.
Thank you for sharing that. I actually think that really perfectly transitioned us into the next passage with Angelo. So I wanted to move us there, but I did have some comments based on what I heard. First thing is, about this, where does it come from? From socialism developing out of capitalism. I thought of Marx's critique of Goethe the Program, where he says what we have to deal with here is a communist society, not as it has developed on its own foundations, but on the contrary, just as it emerges from capitalist society, which is thus in every respect, economically, morally, and intellectually, still stamped with the birthmarks of the old society from whose womb it emerges. So just this idea that you're always going to have to build socialism in the real world with this political economy, with child slavery in the Congo for your supply chains, right? This is just the world you have to engage in, not the one we magically would like. And a lot of Euro socialists struggle with that. A lot of socialists in general, of all colors, do actually. And from there, it made me think about how Eugene Debs is also someone who was incarcerated, right? Like this book is about people who actually did the time, who actually suffered repression and spent time inside the wall. So he's also speaking from experience, which I think counters the academic kind of accusation, because when we say academic, that's usually that. But Amber, I do hear what you're saying. To that point, I think things like there's the readability checkers you use on, your Word documents, Flesh Kincaid things, and you can just look at his writing. And again, he is writing based on the standards of other writers at the time. So even looking at some of these words here is opulence, fanaticism, things like that, that, you would say are more advanced vocabulary. But even in this, and I want to transition to Angelo now, you see they talk about how sharecroppers had informal networks of spreading the information, right? So even if it were complex, they had ways of breaking it down among themselves because it was so important to share that information. I'd also point out that while the vocabulary is complex, similar to what you were saying, Geechee, about Malcolm, the writing is clear though. Like everything Mackenzie was saying, like the sentences themselves are very clear. Capitalism is bad. Like almost, it's like some of these sentences. Here is why. Boom, 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 boom. But the vocabulary and all of that, the style of writing, is definitely what Amber would call, something you would see in academia, something you could submit as a paper at a college and it would be accepted. And to that last point, I do think some European Marxists struggle with this dialectic between the particular and the universal. So they'll talk about something that is particular to European society and history and development, and then talk about all of humanity more broadly. And I think some of that language is a little problematic when you talk about, well, all slavery is ancient, is how Debs frames it. As someone born in the 1850s, as a white man, that's a little crazy, right? So those kinds of things I do struggle with some of our white comrades. Let's talk about how all of humanity is and has been, and how slavery was in every society and things. I don't think that's true, and I think Angelo gets into that in his breakdown.
So, also for context, Angelo lived from 1913 to 1997, and he wrote this: "You cannot kill the working class" in 1937. Any initial thoughts? I actually marked this book up a lot. I mean, this passage up a lot, mainly because his coal mining background. His father died of black lung, and my first organizing experience was in Eastern Kentucky, around a bunch of coal mining. So this is actually, I, I guess I could say, one of my favorite contributions to it. But any initial thoughts about Herndon?
I did think it was interesting that he was writing about, well, the time period was like 1937, because also like the big like industrial sit down strike stuff had just happened too. The Great Depression had just happened. There was like all these major movements that had just occurred in labor. So I thought that was interesting, like to add that context to it. Also, I just finished reading about that for this class a few weeks ago. So I've like been on a deep dive of like the 1930, 1940 labor movement stuff. White people was acting up, boy. But it just made me think about that too, like in the context of it, the time period.
Kind of building off of what Laura was saying too, like in the comparison, like the idea that Debs was able to kind of, so I think Debs was saying that he became more radicalized because he became imprisoned, right? And like the way that he had the privilege of having a particular perspective. Because when you were talking, it reminded me that he went to, the comparison was like child labor, right? And the child labor of that time was particularly affecting white children. So when we come to like an Angelo's like, we have Black people throughout the U.S., particularly in the South, that are experiencing this. He was able to pinpoint something that concretely was being overlooked. And he also called out like the organizers for doing the segregation within like the organizing between the Black and he was saying Negroes then, but the Black folks and the white folks. So I think that is a really good point. Like you can get this kind of perspective of like, classism, like from Debs, like, this working labor classes issue, but definitely Angelo comes in and basically makes it intersectional for the most part. And then also he talks about kind of the experiences from the different regions of the US during this time, because he's like going to Tennessee, he's going to Chicago, he's going to Atlanta, and he's talking about, one, you mentioned the grapevine, like although some folks didn't have access to the reading material, but the ways in which they were spreading the material, but also the propaganda that was being used to kind of create a red scare to keep like the Black workers from being involved or even trying to create this dissension. So I think to your point, like, yeah, it's really also important, like the standpoint of someone like Angelo who's seeing this particular perspective, and also being able to like speak really critically beyond just like the theoretical ideas of like the actual lived conditions of people, like people literally dying. He talks about, I think it was Angelo. Yeah, I think it was Angelo who was mentioning that he saw like his comrade, a worker, get killed in the mines, and how the foremen tried to like cover it up because they didn't want to have to pay the insurance to the family. And like it was his like indignation that spoke out. Like this young man spoke out because he had all these experiences of seeing people, his people, being basically discriminated against, harm. And that's when he got his first taste of kind of like organizing. So Debs is like, he got radicalized because he went to jail, and not to undermine it, but you think about the particular radicalization that was constantly building in Angelo his whole life.
And I know we was kind of saying earlier, and it was no, it was also a joke, but when Laura Amber talked about Black Mandela being always in deep in study, like it was very clear that as Angela Herndon was saying, like he got his hands on anything that he could read, and that aided a lot of the work, and then him being able to still be spoke of today. Was it because his action and study? So I'm curious if there's any thoughts on or reflections of stuff that you read from him.
My reflection was on this piece in the Black radical tradition, specifically around literature. So the autobiography as one of the first forms of Black radical tradition from ancestor Josiah Henson, Malcolm, Masada. And so Angelo takes that up, and this book is tracking his life. So you get to see all the things that politicized him at every single step. And I think that's just probably the most excellent form of political education for people is every single contradiction that we talk about in theory, he's describing it appear in his life. So from losing people, I mean, he starts it with, again, tradition. So I do like the Debs piece talking about where he got his name from and that he has parents and things like that, because oftentimes we forget that white people also have families and things like that. John Brown's family was engaged in struggle. It wasn't just John Brown. So in this piece, he talks about his great grandma experiencing slavery and then goes on to say, regardless of our era, you know, Afro American people are outside of the slave era into this apartheid Jim Crow era. He is still like, I mean, ain't shit changed. Like, that's how he starts. It's like, this is the same, you know, I only heard these stories, so they made sense about my reality now. And I feel that's the same way. Oftentimes, except in this generation, our kids are pushed away from that understanding. But that is like, oh, okay, sounds the same in the 50s. Da, 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 okay, this makes sense. This is how we got to this point. So I appreciate that with Angelo. And to your point, and I'll kick it off to someone else here. But the way he was drawn to knowledge, the way he was drawn to all of this stuff, it was like water to him. Mostly because he could immediately see how it was applicable to his life and changing his own reality. So I think about Huey defining power, right? Like when he was able to recognize ways to resist, um, he was feeling more powerful, like that straight up, no matter what he was going through, because he was going through horrible things as a child, horrible things on the other side, and I think that gets forgot with revolutionaries as well. Is that, you know, it's like, well, they died or they were beaten or whatever, like they were experiencing that already. Like a lot of them were already getting beat up, getting tortured by society, and didn't know why. As soon as he knew why, his resolve was not shaken, and it ending with him coming out of prison, ready to get back to work, was amazing. So. And what's the book again, Geechee, for people who are asking about it?
The book that we are talking about today is Beneath the Mountain, and it's an anti-prison reader, and it's something that we will be engaged in next. I'm gonna put you up. Something we'll be engaged in next week at Morehouse. Jennifer Black and Mumia both edited this book, and yeah, I know we'll. Yeah, but so really quickly, before somebody else goes, I because I was reading Hubert Harrison along with this, and because I got this chronology in my mind all the time, I always like to see who was around when and all these other things, and like, so I was like, Harrison was 30 years older, so he was his movement was happening then. 30 years later, it's Herndon, and each person I did this for. But there's a part when when Herndon also said a little bit about Garvey, and this was like splitting the workers. They said that all the Negroes should go back to Africa. I smiled the first time I heard this. It amused me to see how exactly the program of Marcus Garvey fitted in with the program of the Klan. I was like, so yeah, I'm just curious if y'all, Mackenzie, Amber, if y'all had any thoughts on Herndon's contribution. And his class analysis.
My dog is barking, so I can't come off mute. Somebody else can go.
I also thought that was really funny, and I underlined that section about that. But my main kind of takeaways from Herndon were about the way that it seems like other people don't. It's frustrating, especially in the South, that it seems that other people are so terrified of fighting back, but they also at the same time recognize that the conditions are bad. Like, I liked how he spends a lot of time talking about his realizations that he's being wronged and exploited in his or his work in the mines and in working all these kind of odd jobs, trying to make ends meet. Like he's very much characterizing himself as a working class, everyday kind of person that's experienced all of this violence in his workplace because they're expected to continue to just labor and labor and labor and have their wages just completely like taken from them. Um, and it just felt so like it feels very much like this is happening now where you're seeing like people that are laboring. Like I'm thinking about some of the work I've done with unions and with like trying to create unions in the South and maintain unions in the South and actually have like worker power in the South. But because there are so many like other kinds of laws like the at will states where people can just be fired, like people's fear of being fired from their job or punished, retaliated against by their employer for trying to stand up for better rights prevents them from like actually developing a real critical like analysis of labor. And it was interesting to me to read about like the moments when he realizes, like Lorik was saying, that there is another way to think about this and that there's another way to organize ourselves. And I wrote down that organized people are the single greatest threat to systemic injustice because we could fight back. There are way more workers than bosses, but they won't because we're like conditioned to believe that we can't. So I liked that he thinks about that's part of the emphasis in the whole reader, is that it's about how we come together to acknowledge that we all know this problem, that we see it every day, that the capitalism is pervasive, and that our relationship to that is not like out of our control. So yeah, that were my main kind of thoughts.
I did think the analogy with the Klan thing was funny. I also think that the argument that he was making is one I've heard a lot of times. And my question as an organizer, as Geechee brought up many a times, it's always then like, what are we gonna do? Like, what is the response gonna be? Like, at what point are we gonna say, well, whatever we're doing to try to explain folks' power to them as workers is not working, so let's do a different method. Let's try a different way. I think that that's the main thing that really frustrates me when doing like political study. You saw your friend, didn't get you? Like when doing political study is like reading how much people were doing the same exact thing and it not working, and they still kept doing the same thing or still explaining the same political education topic, but no one is changing how they're doing it to try to get a different result. And I think that's what continues to be frustrating for me, especially as somebody who is a policy organizer, is training folks to organize, talking about different tactics to them, talking about how to create strategy, how to analyze things better, how to make a better impact. My response is always to stop doing the same shit. Because I think that we always will push this idea of like, well, they did this in history and it worked. And every time they try to do it again, it has not. So let's try a different thing.
That makes me think of 3 points. One, just having that much faith in your comrades to get the things done. Angelo had a lot of faith in his comrades, so much so that when he's being tortured psychologically and the guards are telling him he's not going to get out, as soon as he hears his comrades are on the case, he's packing his bag. So I think getting to that level of knowing that our comrades have our back and are ready to fight is where we're aiming. Um, I also think I just love dialectics. I love hearing the echoes throughout history. So Fred Hampton, you can jail a revolutionary, but you can't jail a revolution, was already said by Angelo a little bit earlier. And this chapter is named after that quote where he says that, the workers will set me free, and that you can kill, an Angelo, but there will be two Angelos, three Angelos, thousands of Angelos that emerge in my place because of the conditions that we're dealing with. So that was the second thing that stuck out to me. And the third was how these struggles again get co-opted. And that's why it's so important to lift this person up, lift up a Harrison, lift up an Angelo, because the stuff he's talking about, and I like how these sections are titled after like demands and things. All of them are things that people now, liberals now, will claim like they fought for. This is what their ancestors, and they're talking about liberals and shit. But this stuff, like basic stuff that people think or take for granted now, he's just like, death penalty for lynchers, right? He's talking about basic human dignity. They can't call me nigger and darky in the prison anymore. And that is stuff like Kwame Ture says we have to fight and die for, we have to shed our blood for, just for basic human dignity. So for people to try and claim that struggle now and not know Angelo's name is a problem. And we got to work on fixing that.
I think, and I probably said this multiple times after I read Nat Turner and John Brown, and then obviously Angelo as well. Like there's a, for lack of a better word, if other people say something different, there's like a spiritual component to knowing that you're doing something that's going to allow your name to live on. And I know you said that John Brown's family was in the movement, but I don't think nobody knows who John Brown's family is. I don't think they know his daughter, he wrote to his daughter and he told them not to be ashamed of the name, but we 245 years later and we still talking about John Brown, Angela Hernandez, those people. So, and when you read them, you can tell they actually, again, whether it's the movement or the name or the work, like they actually see the relevancy of their name or their work or their actions, and they see it tied to a larger thing. And so I'm curious if that's like how we grapple with that conversation around like what is it to live beyond or understand that your current comforts is definitely not something that you can hold on to, because like you can die and then that's it, and everything that you've done or who you were could just be not remembered. So what I said was like John Brown and Nat Turner, they not only outlived their family and their daughters or whatever, but they outlived their memory too. Because like even when you die, like you have like people remember you for a little while, but like these people outlive not only their life and the memory of these folks. And I just wondered if there's thoughts around that.
I like how we're kind of like interweaving back and forth. I think Laura was saying the dialectic, right? Like even with Yukichi, you brought up like, oh, like what was Hubert Harrison doing at the time, right? And then one of the things that we learned was that he was erased, right? There was a point where they tried to erase him because he was radicalizing against everyone else. But then to jump ahead to our chapter with Mumia and the idea that the comrades, kind of like what you said with Angelo, where when he was inside the prison, they were abusing him. And he was like, he heard that his comrades were still organizing, and that like energized him. And Mumia, like when we get to that next chapter, is the idea that folks on the outside basically organized to basically stop this kind of like 30-day in the hole for him. So it's like also the idea that your actions mean something to people, even if you're not necessarily trying to create legacy. But I think it's like also like your actions become like cultural artifacts, right? They become the history. They become the thing that you're remembered for. Because I think there's one thing where people are like, oh, I want my name to go down, right? And there's a legacy. I don't know how I feel about that, but I see people who are like, they are called and convicted about humanity, about dignity. And that to me is the cultural artifact in a way that will live beyond, and also will motivate other people to like, as Angelo said, become the second, the third, the multiplying effect of Angelo's, right? So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think that's the other thing. Like when we think about collective action and collective movement, there is is also a matter of a collective consciousness, right? That has to be beyond just the one individual, right? There's something very spiritual in that. And so if there are folks who have made particular sacrifices and we lift up the names of our comrades, we're doing it in the name of the full action. But I think there's something to be said for like, ultimately what it is there's a conviction that is rooted not just in me, the individual, it's rooted in our greater cultural cause and need.
Any other thoughts on that before we go to the next one? So should we go to Mamiya next? So Mamiya wrote this Uncivil Action in 1998. And obviously I think everybody on this channel and on the screen know who Mamiya is, so we don't have to do too much that explanation. But yeah, any initial thoughts here? And then, by the way, obviously Mamiya edited a bunch of most of the book. So when Lord was saying at the beginning, before the letters, there's an explanation when you break it down, like Mamiya words was all through it. Yeah, any initial thoughts?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. I hate the "what do we do" question that organizers get because I think there's so many things to do, and I also get frustrated when people can't answer it. So this chapter, I mean, first off, shout out Bring Mumia Home, which houses his campaign. I know people on this channel are familiar, but we always have new viewers. So if you want to get involved, you can check that out and get active on the ground. But I think these kind of things, what do you do? Like, it was so important how all of the people involved in this action were. Like, everybody counted in making sure, like, first of all, that he wasn't executed, which is where this starts with. The governor is bragging, I sharpened my pencil so I can, which are you signing in pencil? I didn't even, that was weird. But anyway, sharpening my pencil to sign the death warrant for this man. And so everyone paying attention to it, everyone calling the lines, everyone constantly putting in effort, even though it seems small, like it's only for one individual, is reflective of this entire system. As you can see, the entire empire is working to, like, destroy this man. So I saw so many opportunities where small actions, small things by individuals outside the walls were able to make big impacts on Mumia's life. And then understanding that Mumia's life, as you just said, these kind of things become cultural artifacts. Like, this kind of echoes throughout time. The one person who might have done this one thing is showing up in this book years later, right, for that kind of action. And they don't know that in the moment. So I just really appreciated this chapter for giving us that. And I know the next chapter that we're going to talk about does that as well. But those are my first thoughts.
I'll jump in. I think one of the things that I particularly appreciated about the chapter too, it was like, well, one for me, definitely the travel down the history, right? Like remembering all of these moments, like having been there, like remembering the particular, like, and when I'm saying being there, like in the news, family, organizers of the time, but then also getting always to have the inside perspective, like him being able to explain what's happening. Something that also stood out to me was like the way in which Mumia had to like learn, like he had to be, a lawyer on the inside to kind of like also advocate, because also the ways in which he could be basically disenfranchised from his lawyers, right? Also, even to know like they're not supposed to be opening his mail. So I don't want to give away too many of the details, but for me, it was just like really seeing like this kind of like, it's not even just like in self-advocacy, because there's a point where he even mentioned like there are moments where sometimes someone who is imprisoned cannot actually have his attorney, but he could have another inmate basically kind of advocate for them. And so the importance of someone having this kind of knowledge in this speak. So there were things that he was giving, that he was explaining, but also particularly showing the kind of cyclical nature of basically the Department of Corrections, in terms of like, they basically get their power from the Constitution, but then in terms of like breaching his rights, they say that our laws here in this prison basically breaches your constitutional rights, right? And so he spells it out, he breaks it down very succinctly. He also uses like the laws and kind of shows like the precedents of before, like how they are his lawyers and attorneys were basically trying to argue his case. And so it's like you're just literally getting an inside view of like how this egregiousness is basically playing out. So I think that's the thing that stood out to me, is like being able to see it from the inside, also understanding the importance of like the particular ways in which the folks who are imprisoned basically have to kind of like almost know institutionally and know, like we were talking about, like, you know, intellectualism and folks who basically are not academics, but on the inside you have to know this because at any moment you could be violated, right? So I think that's the other, and I think the other thing too, I don't want to take up too much time, was like, you know, me not realizing, like thinking that this charge that they're bringing up on him is that he's trying to be a professional journalist and that he's trying to make a profession out of, like, you know, writing books. And then we're reminded once again, labor, like you're exploited for your labor, right? Like this idea, like you're not allowed to make money. You're not allowed to be a journalist, to have your profession. People want to hear from you. And it's like, once again, this kind of carceral state, and also much how it mirrors what we're seeing on the outside. So yeah, I just liked it because it's just like all of the details and the nuances that some of us may not be quite aware of if we're not very intimately aware of like how the prison system works, but then also particularly how people are violated, you know, through the system.
Yeah, and towards the end of the book, Julia Wright wrote just kind of like pretty much wrote a letter to Mumia and was talking about. So if you just think about even from the beginning, the time that he's arrested till today, it's like constant trying to kill this man and break this man's spirit. And then, as you said, even with that case, like him being well read, him being well attuned, and organizing in the prison as people organize outside for him. It was almost like art to say, oh, well, this particular warding person is against this thing when they signed off on this other person who now is dead. They can't speak. And I just thought that was beautiful. And then, as I said, Julia talked about with like Lucretia Clemens on how this new evidence is there. And she was like, well, I already heard the story before. I'm not listening. And I'm not watching any of it. And so, yeah, I just think to see Mumia's spirit, I can't see how that's not motivating for any and everybody, and to stand on a particular thing and still be able to contribute. And Jennifer was saying this too, like, you know, he's damn near blind at this point, but like he got so much, he has so much in there. Like you can literally send something to Mumia and he can write a book and respond to it and be like as if he never was gone. Like he's literally trapped in the prison and literally can speak on almost anything that it has to relate to and be as current because he's in communication. So I just think this that reality is something that's one could be sad about, but also could be extremely motivated and inspired.
I thought the essay was really good to describe like what being in the federal prison or criminal justice system is like. I definitely agree with what Gigi's saying about like you can tell that Mia like he know what the fuck he doing, and it wasn't like phasing him the way they were treating him, but I do think it was important that he explained like what was happening because I mean that's something I talked about before too, like how we operate jails and prisons, and how like even the jail here is operated like a prison. Like jails are not meant to hold people for forever. Like you're supposed to come here, pay your bill, and get out. But like the first time I went to jail, the first thing I asked was like they were explaining like all these rules and stuff, and I was like, "You're explaining these rules to me as if I'm gonna stay here, like as if I'm not leaving, and as if people come here and they don't leave." You're talking about a point system. You're talking about how I rise in these different levels to gain more time outside, all this other stuff. That's what people do in prisons. And to me, it was one of the things that kind of got me on like the abolitionist track, but it also showed me that like all these systems are meant to imprison you, and they start no matter like what the actual thing is called, like they're like treated like it's a prison, like somewhere you won't leave, even though people leave that jail every day. but they still operate it like it's a prison that you will not get out of. And I also think that that's purposeful because the psychological warfare and like trauma impact of it is a reason why recidivism is so consistent and so high. So I did think that it was important that he explained the details of like how he was being treated, what he was hearing, like on the death row cells versus like the federal prison. And I also do think that there's a difference in like federal. I've been in federal prison. I mean, not federal prison. I've been in federal court a few times, and it is a lot different from like criminal or civil court. I've been in civil court as well, and it's like a lot more intimidating, a lot more strict. And I think that that's on purpose too. Like they want to scare the hell out of you because like how dare you challenge a system? You know, how dare you push this case? Like no. So we're going to punish you by making this the most horrible experience we can because we just mad that you're making us do all of that. So I think that that's what it reminded me of is like how we already have these systems that treat folks in this way. And I did not know that he had been like, they tried to kill him multiple times. I knew like about this time and a few others, but like I didn't know that it was this consistent. And I agree with Geechee. Like I actually don't know if I would, it's somebody who's been to jail 3 times. This last time was a lot for me. So I don't know if I could handle like all of that. Because I agree it's a lot mentally for you to take on. And I think that for him to continue to like push through is like really telling of him, like him as a leader. But I think it's also why they keep trying to kill him.
Amber, I was directly on that thought train that you just were on because I was drawn to the quote for this chapter. I know we have been talking about liberalism a lot, and in the remix glossary, there's this quote about from a Native Hawaiian about how the Constitution is written and it has these ideals, but it can't abide the reality of imperialism. So then when I see Mumia say we are under a constitution, but the constitution is what the judges say it is, quoting a U.S. Supreme Court Justice Charles Evans, right? That is to me like liberalism. So when you're talking about how it's actually practiced, how people are meant to be in cages, Mumia talks about how even though it's supposed to be this fair court, the judges, everybody in the system has animosity toward prisoners for just trying to use the system on its own terms, not even trying to tweak it or be revolutionary, which is what, again, as we know, pushes people into revolutions. The system's not rational. It has these contradictions in it. So that's what stuck out to me this entire time. It's about what is written versus what is actually practiced, how the wardens, how every single person in this system is allowed to exercise their individual will, but it always is in service of the empire, of pressing Mumia, of making his life miserable in all of these ways. So just wanted to again highlight liberalism and why revolutionaries are such a problem for liberals, because Mumia in so many ways represents all the things liberals claim to want. He's an emancipatory journalist, which is one thing. He's an author, so he's being punished for his intellectual production. I know we talked about the Pendleton 2 on this platform. The prisoner who was attacked, Lokmar, was like the jailhouse lawyer, to Tara's point. He was doing this work. He was the PE, person. They would go to him for political education and for information about the jailhouse, and that was why he was targeted. So Mumia producing these books, I think Mumia's trying to get a PhD. I think I submitted some information for his thesis. I think it's at UC Santa Cruz or something. But Mumia is also still actively right now trying to do all the things liberals claim, right? Become a PhD and all of that. So I just want to highlight that's why he's a threat.
Kinsey, any thoughts?
My one like addition, I guess, because I absolutely echo everything that everyone's been saying, was about like communication. And I felt like the piece about the seizing of the letters and stripping that, like we know that the system is designed to have like this like psychological like trauma and this whole like separation. It's already bad enough that you're separated from your family and community, and that's intentional. But then to take away kind of your one and only method of communication with the outside world, and with, like, frankly, in this case, like, you're hoping to communicate with your lawyers for legal advice and hope, it felt very intentional. And not to like segue into the nest section, but it's kind of a similar thing of like this ability to communicate with people outside is like paramount. Like, it's so essential, because other than that, you're literally like in a cage, but you're also like, your mind is just in a cage inside of the facility, and you don't really have like the ability to connect with people. And that's really important. And I know, because I've been visiting the immigration detention center, like, when things go wrong with people being able to communicate, like, and that's like you were saying, Geechee, about like the spirit that Mamiya embodies, like, to be able to keep going when you're not able to communicate with even your lawyer, like, you're already not going to be able to really be talking to your family. You're not really going to be able to be connecting with the other people, because they're moving you to specific units and trying to put you in the hole so that you can't communicate with other people. You're being punished for writing and thinking and having your own mind. And then on top of that, they're seizing your mail and reading it and photocopying it. And you know that everything that you're doing is being like deeply surveilled. It's so difficult. Like, just to watch people not be able to get their mail in the immigration detention, and they're only there for a short amount of time. And it's like that's your one last communication from your sister, from your mom, before you know that you're going to be deported. Like, it's just so fucked up. Like, I know that it's intentional, but when I was reading that, like, this is one of the things that stuck out, because I just can't imagine like trying to figure out how to get through the case and like learn everything that you need to know in order to defend yourself properly against a system that's literally leveraging every possible lie and loophole to continue its assault on your life, and still have to do that even without being able to communicate with other people and be inspired and fulfilled. And like, humans are social creatures, and you're depriving him of the one thing that makes us human. And yeah, I feel like this was like an incomplete thought, but like, that's what I was really thinking about and resonating with me.
I think that thought was very clear. Anybody want to introduce the nest? I know that was a recent segue, and it's very relevant. Anybody want to introduce what? Because I just assume a lot of people don't know about the story. I wasn't very clear on all of it, but anybody want to introduce this last one?
Do we want to read the introductory passage? I don't mind doing that.
Yep. That'd be dope.
Cool. So, Saphir Ness, Phone Resistance 2022. A single spark can start a fire, and Saphir Ness's account of a successful prison campaign around the issue of phone usage provides insurgent inspiration. Ness was born in 1990 in New Jersey and raised in Philadelphia. In this piece, he sidesteps abstract ideology and platitudes, delivering practical strategies for winning basic freedoms through solidarity, avoiding physical and interpersonal walls, minimizing administrative repercussions, and maximizing leverage from outside supporters. Ness advances the model of the Hydra, a concept also identified by Russell Maroon Schultz in The Dragon and the Hydra, as a way to be innovative and undefeatable, even when up against a formidable and intimidating opponent. Just as colonialists and oppressors have borrowed strategies from each other through the ages and fine-tuned their methods of domination and coercive power, so too do we share and refine models of resistance. Ness tells us incarcerated people are not only separated from the free world, we are separated from each other. Yet he also demonstrates that the antidote to the alienation that results from such separation is solidarity. Prison censorship is a nefarious tool that administrators use to keep incarcerated people from organizing, writes Ness, and those outside from knowing we're always resisting. Politicized on the streets of Philly during the height of the Occupy movement, Saphir Ness spent the first 11 years of his adult life in prison, where he became an abolitionist, in part due to exposure to the writings of Martin Sostre and the mentoring of fellow prisoners. Since his release in 2023, he has been living in central Pennsylvania, where he writes and produces In the Mix Prisoner podcast and organizes around issues of abolition. Free now, he no longer has to worry about the repercussions of his prison organizing. Writing this article put him in the hole. Therefore, the least we can do is read it, learn from it, and share it far and wide. Muted, Geechee.
My bad. So who want to go first? Yep, that's right. Yep.
You can go, Geechee.
I can go. Thanks. I appreciate it. No, so yeah, I think again this was pretty short, but it was hella marked up by me. Maybe I was trying to find out one passage that I wanted to read, but so yeah, so this as a Ezra, I'm sorry, I keep calling Ezra Lorick. We got so many Joshes and Ezras and Lords. But in 435 it says spreading our message as a group to those with influence over large numbers of people allowed us to share some of the risks. Again, like this idea of organizing is helping people change their relationship to risk. And then whenever you engage in with organizing, you probably should engage with the leaders in these spaces who also have a ability to help other people get comfortable with changing their relationship to risk. And so they, Ness and his team, make sure they had leaders from different populations to kind of like speak to. Now there was an army of organizers that made it much more difficult for the administration to identify the initial organizer. And even if they did, by sending us to solitary confinement, it wouldn't neutralize the resistance. It's not that we were leaderless. Instead, our leaders were embedded with the people, taking direction from the people and directly accountable to them. This is called building a hydra. When you chop a dragon's head off, it dies. A hydra has multiple heads, and when you chop one off, two more grow in its place. And again, I think that tactic and of building what to the what you call it, the enemies would look like a leaderless opposition, but it's really a method of organizing that is clear, where all folks in this room or all folks in this movement, they are very clear on their objectives. And although they might come from different cells or parts, they understand that it's something that's bigger than them, and in fact, responding with violence is not going to actually scare them. It's actually going to turn them up more. So I just think that that example was pretty dope. So that was one of the passages in his writing that kind of stuff. Also, really quickly, I'm sorry. So there was a little update. So one of the tenants, the tenants that we were organizing in Heritage Station in the Pittsburgh neighborhood, and I think I've told y'all about the manager who came to the seniors building and started like, who trying to get me in trouble? I make six figures. Like he's under investigation, and they actually got rid of him because he was a liability to the corporation because he actually did what we thought he would do. But the reality is he could not find who the leader. He didn't know who we were as outside. He didn't know if the one sister was doing it. He was trying to like intimidate some of the. He just really didn't know who was running it. And even his little secretive people who was in these meetings, they couldn't really tell. They could probably identify some of us with our org, but they really couldn't tell who was kind of moving it. So I thought that was fitting stuff. But go ahead, Emma.
It's fine. I was just gonna say I thought that I liked reading about like the campaign they had and the Hydra and stuff like that. And I thought it was really important because I think it's kind of something that I have talked about in organizing. And I think that was a good analogy, like explaining what the Hydra is, because I feel like decentralized movements where everyone feels like they have ownership of something, but also they feel like they're taking less of a risk because so many people are involved is usually going to be more successful. And when I was reading that, I also thought about the Free Alabama movement, like Mackenzie talked about earlier, because I've been on calls with one of the guys in the Free Alabama movement. Like the nigga was in jail on the Zoom calls, he was organizing. Like that was the coolest shit, some of the coolest shit I ever done. And I think it also shows similar to what Mamiya does. Like the cell walls don't stop organizing or stop like things from getting out, and they were still able to like organize these street blocks in the actual like outside of the prison in their communities from being in jail to like make an impact. And it also made me think about the Irish Republican Army, which is one of my favorite examples of like decentralized or movements where no one really knew who was a leader. And I like Gichi was explaining what they're doing in ATL. I like that they have a movement like that happening there, where like they're able to use these tactics where folks are not able to figure out who truly is in charge. Like the fact that the IRA was able to go for so long without anybody even knowing what the people looked like says a lot about their organizing. And I feel like we don't have a lot of examples of that here. Like we have a few, but it's not as much as there could be. And I feel like because of that, the campaigns aren't as successful as they could be because folks are obsessed with being like influencer activist types. And so they want to be known versus actually having some real like impact. And it annoys me. But I really liked reading that. That was one of my favorite ones. Geechee specifically, for everybody wondering, wanted to know what I thought about this one. And I thought this shit was cool as hell because the type of organizing they did, like the way they did that, is some shit I would have did too. It's kind of something what I'm doing right now for something else. But I think that when people feel ownership of something, they're more likely to follow through on it and they're less likely to push back. And when we're like facing like what we have here right now with this federal occupation, so many people are so afraid that they're unwilling to even come outside. So how do you move people from that point to like responding to rapid response? And that's because we're all making sure folks are taking ownership of the campaigns that we're running here so that they feel more comfortable to do things. So I do think it starts there. Like everyone has to feel accountable and like they're going to be held accountable, but they also want to be held accountable and they want to support. It shit was good, wasn't it, Lori? Mm-hmm.
It's so funny because like earlier when we were talking about the first chapter, the Debs, and you were talking about being an organizer, I was like, oh, I know which one you're going to be excited about because it was like they gave the step by step, right? But the thing, like, so the other thing that I appreciated about it was that they leaned into the thing that they were trying to take away from them, right? So it was like the idea was like we're going to restrict your phones, and they were seeing like they gradually, like how they're boiling it up, they're gradually taking away their restrictions, and I'm like, I think that was the thing. Like I like the analogy of the Hydra, but it was like, oh, you're going to take away our phones, we're going to refuse your phone list. Matter of fact, you're trying to feed us, we don't want your food. And like, and you think about when people do like strikes, and the idea, I was even thinking about like the bus boycott, right? The idea like, oh, we won't even take your bus. Oh, you tell them where we can sit. So I kind of speaking to this idea of fear is like what happens in that courage where you face the thing that you think you're afraid of, when you face the sacrifice that you think that, you know, you would basically I think kind of going back to Angelo's chapter, there was a point where the people were working, the workers were working, and they weren't getting their money, and then they were like basically deducting their money, right? And he was saying they were grumbling, but they just took it. What happens if you lean into and you create like a boycott or a strike or a resistance against that, right? So I think that was the thing that I really appreciated because like what we're seeing are people who are in prison who already are like being abused. They have like very little like resources, very little in terms of freedoms. And I think about like the way that they experience the total institution where their entire lives are being controlled on the inside, and people might kind of have this pity, but like folks who are like outside, Like, we are in a total institution as well, right? We have all of these privileges, we have all these abilities to organize, and let alone we still have the same type of fears, the same type of concerns about the subsistence, about the little meager things that we hold precious. And so, to see folks on the inside, like, literally 15 minutes of a phone call, that is all the connection, but I will deny myself that to basically stand up for my rights and to have more, make sure that you can't encroach upon me. And we have so many more liberties, and we won't even do the minimal sacrifices. So that was the thing that really stood out to me about the organizing.
I want to jump in too. I like also the conversation that they have about how they approach someone who's not familiar with what they're trying to do. The guy, he's like, oh, well, I'm going to go sign up because I think I want to sign up. And it's not necessarily like to say, oh, he's trying to like undermine this entire project that we're doing, but to take that as an opportunity to call him in and say, hey, like, actually, this is what we're doing. And it's amazing that when they do that, they explain to him, hey, we're trying to do this so that we can really have a better situation where our phone usage isn't controlled. He goes and scratches his name off the list. And I thought that was really useful. But also, I really liked the way that they talk about how, like, there's always going to be one person that just is fucking the whole thing up. Like, there's like one person that just like refuses to like be on board.
Wait,
And
how you get the book already?
they sent it to me.
So everybody who's participating got a book. Chill out, man. Chill out. See, you always be finished, Mackenzie. Finish.
But it reminded me too of one of the parts of the Angelo section where he's talking about how like administrators in these different institutions are going to call on certain people to scab for the other side so that we won't be like as one unit. And it was a similar situation in the Nest section where you have somebody they're just not on board, and they're probably all buddy with the people at the top because they think that, I don't know, if they are like close enough that they'll be happy with themselves at least. And but I think that it's still a reminder to us, because even right now, like, it feels like, oh, there's no use in like doing things sometimes and trying to organize people because there's so many people that refuse to get on board. But I feel like it was a reminder too that good things can happen and like movements can progress without every single person being on board. And sometimes it's a part of like the process, that acknowledging that some people are not going to be converted, some people are not going to join on, some people are going to want to continue the small, very small provision that they've been given so that they don't have to resist, but that we can still have community with each other and to have success in our movements without like trying to worry about convincing every single person or imagining that the only way we can progress is if every single person is on board. So I appreciated that too.
So that the part, and I don't know if Amber mentioned this when I was out, but the part when he talked about the middle class prisoners, on page 438, he says not every what'd you say?
I thought that part was interesting too.
Yeah. He said not every block participant participated in the boycott. For example, one block with low participation houses the majority of workers in the corrections industry, CI shop. They are the highest paid positions in the prison, averaging $150 a month. These are mostly older men who have come to cherish the money. Many of them are white. These privileges affect their unity with the other prisoners. I was like, oh, that would be just interesting. I mean, obviously we have that outside, but like the middle class prisoner who like, bro, I get 150, and then I can imagine like the entrepreneurial spirits in there, people selling canteen and whatever. It's like, circulating So I just thought that was pretty fascinating, the class dynamics within even the prison systems.
Thanks for bringing it up. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Lord.
No, you teed it up perfectly. I'll work backwards, but McKinsey and Geechee, that was where I was going as well. It's a class analysis in all of these. That is what you notice across these political prisoners. That is why Marxism's a living science that anyone can pick up. Even if Marx didn't exist, someone else would have found it. And now I'm saying, like, it's just so obvious why, right? This person's doing a class analysis of the prison. Asada Shakur does a class analysis of the prison. And really understanding capitalism is not just a political and economic, obviously, but a social system. Why does this prisoner identify more with the guards than he does with the prison? He doesn't have class consciousness. So again, all these terms become very relevant immediately when we apply them to our situation. I wanted to talk about the decentralization, the dragon and the hydra thing, and why, I think this does appeal to organizers because it talks about how to get something done, start to finish. I see we have a comment highlighted about denied visibility, but just there's so many limited resources that prisoners have that people outside the wall, just being one more resource, instantly increases their chances. Like if they only have so much and you offer them some sort of new avenue to strategize around, some sort of pathway, you've now changed how they can organize. And that's like super important. I did like that they pointed out the decentralized leadership. They couldn't figure out who it was coming from, but there is still politicized leadership. That was what I wanted to point out with Safir. Like it says that he avoids abstract ideology in the sense that I don't think his goal with this campaign was to build a bunch of revolutionaries. I think that's going to happen. I think you'll find people who emerge and are more serious, but his goal was to get something done, right? For a specific campaign around a specific issue of human dignity in the prison. But you can tell he is still politicized. He himself does understand the abstract ideology and the theory. He was trained by Russell Maroon Schultz. So I just wanted to point out, even if the campaign itself does not manifest in the form of that revolutionary ideology, the person driving it still is grounded in that. So that was my one point. My other point was about, even though it's decentralized, there is leadership. It's just organic. And so I think that's important to think of too. How do we construct leadership dialectically? What does that mean? When they sit there talked about all the people that they organized, they said there were leaders. There was the Muslim group, there was a Black nationalist group, there were white groups, there were some social circles where they, even though they didn't call someone a leader, they moved the way this person moved, maybe because they were an elder on the block. So all of these things, like leadership does emerge naturally from some kind of, conditions. And it's okay to organize that, but it can be decentralized. So I thought that was an interesting thing we got to observe with this campaign.
When you get in that book, I recommend you go to Safir and Safia also, because I think both of those chapters does some things for you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that the class narrative was important there too, because I think that's one of the things that I've been like studying about, especially around like the labor movement stuff. Also, when people say consciousness, I've been thinking about that King Kong consciousness thing. Because that man is an idiot. Why would he put those things together?
He was a big ape. I wanted to add, you also teed me up, Amber, sorry, for a great plug. Shout out Brother Kinetic. I know you were talking about the Alabama solution, which is a documentary that was released. Black Men Build had Brother Kinetic on our mass call with Two Black and Jamal Joseph. So go check that out if you haven't. It's on our YouTube channel. We also will probably have Brother Kinetic back if he can to air that next month as well. So the Alabama Solution 2025 documentary about what's been going on. And Brother Kinetic is a brilliant organizer, very tapped in. I think Millennials Are Killing Capitalism covered that earlier this week too. So just wanted to shout that out. My last piece to open the discussion to y'all is also this discussion of time. I noticed that all of these people we read are really dealing with this understanding of capitalism and time, how it robs you of time, how it robs you of labor, which is robbing you of time, how essentially even these prisoners, what sent them over the edge in this case with Saphir was time. Like you cannot talk to people for a certain amount of time. Saphir analyzes like the size of the prison yards, how they're making them smaller, like how they're specifically limiting organizing. So one more plug, but we had a mass call about labor last night, and someone was talking about the service industry, how it's transitioned from maybe Eugene Debs' time or Herndon's time of a small mining facility to now you have thousands of workers at Wendy's across the metro Atlanta area. And so that's how organizing is transformed. So I see Saphir also talking about how prison organizing is transformed in his era compared to previous ones.
So before we let our beautiful sisters go, and before we get them to give their invite to our event next week, I did wanted to circle back because there was a conversation in the chat, and I think I wonder if we can kind of struggle for clarity around this, right? So obviously, Dr. Taylor is a professor at I'm about to say Howard. My bad. You should go back. You should go back to Howard. I know they want you to come back home. Morehouse, and then Mackenzie is a bright student about to graduate from Spelman. All of us probably had our little school time. But there was a lot of conversation going in the chat after the academic thing, and then I think Lord made a great point, and I wonder if Tara and Mackenzie can kind of add on or respond to that, and let's just kind of have like if we can struggle for unity in terms of how we see I guess language and I guess I think you said academic jargon or academic terms, and then like our responsibility to make it plain, explain things, because sometimes words could explain things, and like hegemony could be a big ass word, but it could explain something very quicker than saying like, well, we're socially and politically and economically and culturally dominated. You could just be like this, right? So yeah, I'm curious to hear y'all thoughts on that conversation, and then we could begin to wrap.
My thoughts. So I actually agree with Amber. Like the beginning and the end of Debs, he was all flowery in language, and it definitely spoke to kind of like the language of the time. This is also why, like, when I'm like trying to teach souls of Black folks, or like even when people deal with Shakespeare and stuff like that, like the language of the time, right? But also the ways in which, like, the idea of making it plain and keeping it simple, but also the ways in which when someone speaks and they speak in a way like African American vernacular English or something like that, we're less likely or more likely to listen to them, engage with them, right? But I think one of the things that when you were talking, I was like, also the ways in which language starts to become a part of the common speech. So like, people know about microaggressions now, right? And that was because someone was a researcher, or even intersectionality, right? So there's a place, but I think it also, the language, people catch on to it because it speaks to a condition and experience that they know intuitively. And they're like, oh, that's the word for that thing, right? I'm also, I'm a person that I don't typically use like jargon, but at the same time, if you read a lot, there's a point where you forget what is jargon anymore, especially because once you become like learned in a particular like discipline, the words become common and it just becomes a part of your vocabulary. But I'm also a firm believer that you got to make it plain for people to understand, because that's the way I think. Like, my students, I cuss. And so I cuss in class because when I'm on a roll and my brain is working, I'm more likely to curse. And at the same time, I also recognize, like, if I'm in a particular audience, like especially like around my grandma or somebody like that, I know that can be offensive, and it might remove that from them. But it is a barrier. It's a way that we can create boundaries around like knowledge, connection, and once again, just reifying kind of like stratification. Yeah, that's my kind of like 2 cents on it. I mean, it's one of those things I can go on and on and on because of like the social construction of language and what that means to reifying stratification. But that's where I'm going to pause right there.
That's a good point. So and I think James started with like those folks are intellectuals, and then Sadiq said intellectualism is important. So is clarity, but I do think there are concepts that it's on us to break down and explain through. So again, we want to make sure that when the comment was made, where nobody's taking it as it's an anti-intellectual comment. And so, yeah, Mackenzie, if there's any thoughts from this conversation.
Yeah, I think like being at Spelman, I've begun to recognize like how much a privilege it is to be formally educated like in college and be exposed to some of the language that we're talking about, so that like Dr. Taylor was saying, like you get used to reading and writing in a certain kind of way, that like certain words and phrases and the way that we call things in academia becomes like second nature to even like how I speak. And I noticed that my speech has changed, having to speak in class and to speak to my professors and to other academics. But I also think that we have a responsibility to make sure that what we're doing in our ivory tower is actually productive and useful for something, and not just like making up words to describe things for the sake of having a word to describe it. And I do think that there's a lot, especially in pop culture, of like spillover from academia to the general public, because like people know things like she was saying about microaggressions or like the male gaze or something like that. That's like you kind of have an idea of things, even if you're not familiar with the actual like scholarship on it. But particularly for my generation, I feel like the academic jargon is getting to be really exclusive. And because people already don't read like they should, and the literacy is even worse, I feel, since like people are so used to things being explained to them in 30-second videos on TikTok that when you have to read something and the author is using language that you're unfamiliar with, like people don't even feel a responsibility to look things up and try to understand on a deeper level. So I personally think that it's also academia's responsibility to respond to this and to still try to, particularly for the Black intellectual tradition, to still be responsive to like what's going on in a way that is like digestible for people that it's actually for. Because how can we be conducting this research, coming up with this terminology and saying that it's to benefit other Black people, and then other Black people are not even included in the conversation because they can't understand what I'm trying to say by what I'm doing? So I think that there's definitely a line, and I feel there's a lot of people that they want to speak in a certain way because it's typical in their discipline. But these are also Eurocentric disciplines that are meant to like make academia into this like supreme form of work. So it's such a difficult line to draw, but I think it's really important that we still make sure that what we're saying makes sense and is legible in multiple contexts, that it's appreciated in our professional academic context, but also actually has meaning and transferability in the layman's terms and in like a regular community context.
Before Laura and Amber finish with this, Chilimacha says, during that era, lots of people both spoke and wrote at levels that we don't do now as a population. It's due to the era, and we're judging by modern norms. And then Legbas, I think it's worth challenging the idea of academic when you consider the revolutionaries' goal should be to assist in creating an educated and informed working class. So obviously, raising people's political sophistication will mean that there's going to be some words and thoughts and concepts that we struggle around. Lord and Amber, any additions?
Yeah, you highlighted the comment I was going to highlight. Part of this is era, right? Like I think Sophia writes like somebody from our era. It doesn't sound like it was written by someone who was born in 1855. We talked about uh, the era in terms of how they had to write. There were, no text communication in that sense. You had to write letters. You had to read scripts. You went to Bible study and read the Bible That is how many Black people learn literacy, is from the Bible, myself included. Even my elementary school teachers would comment on some of my transitions, and it's because I'm reading King James version of the Bible. So she was kind of like, "Hey, bro," I was like, "I don't know, that's hard to get up." So I think that's just common, right? Like people were actually going to plays and theaters in that sense. Not saying they don't do it now, but like that was how they were engaging. That was the Avengers back then. Going to the theater and watching a play or something, or August Wilson, whatever, if you were uh, allowed to do that. But I think this was across classes. I see a lot of these on the street interviews with folks who are not formally educated, and even how they speak, their diction sounds better than ours, sounds better than mine when I say every other word. So yeah, just wanted to comment on that. I do think, Tara, you said something that's so profound that I really am trying to emphasize with people and do often, which is that people are always thinking, right? Like that's just how that goes. So people are intuitively searching for something. When they find a label, that is what they're going to cling to if it accurately defines what they're talking about. And what I think the problem is sometimes those origin points are from people who are academic, right? Or who are liberal, or who don't have a revolutionary ideology, but they are articulating something that the people already feel. So I made this argument about Afro-pessimism. It exists outside the university before Wilderson ever made the word. Kwame Ture talked about Afrocentricity the same way that Du Bois has said it like 50 years before Asante had. Kwame Nkrumah had already been dealing with it. So I just wanted to give that example of what I've been saying this whole time, dialectical, a word that I didn't use years ago, but so accurately defines my reality and what I'm doing in the world that I use it all the time. And so when we have circles in Black Men Build, it's become a joke where someone's like, "Oh, that's what Lorik said is delectable," like a joke. But like people know, the word dialectical has become a part of everyday vocabulary, because I think it's one that when you look at it, it will tie people into a specific revolutionary history if they want to study more. But also, it is something that you can use to describe everyday shit. And that's what Black people do with our language, is we come up with terms, slang, to describe everyday shit that people then copy and steal later. So that's my thoughts on the academia kind of conversation we're dealing with here.
Word up, Mo. DC. Shout out to DC.
Not you saying Mo now. We know what that means.
Go ahead. We do?
I do. But
it's not street nigga jargon?
I've definitely heard people say Mo a few times. But I thought the conversation was interesting. I don't understand why we didn't get books, but it's cool. You know, I'm going to look out for mine.
Y'all ain't part of the event, shorty. This is for the event people. You want to come down to Atlanta? I'll send you a book.
And if I respect the hustle,
I'll be there this weekend. Have my book ready. Get it signed. Yeah. I wasn't ready for that one.
Wait, Jennifer's going to bring some books, right?
Yeah, she brings.
All right, I got their books.
Thank you.
Yes, there you go.
Or get mine signed, because Geechee ain't going to do it.
I got you.
Appreciate it. But no, this is a great conversation. Yeah, I fuck with it. Next time, get us the stuff ahead of time. Don't get you. I need at least 2 days.
That is ahead of time.
Ooh, that's not
Did you get this morning or no?
By the most technical definition, it was ahead of time. Yeah.
But did you die though?
Also, someone did ask for updates about my roster in the chat, and I just want y'all to know that I'm still
next week we back, guys.
I just want y'all to know that there are no updates.
We ain't got no time for no updates. Listen, this is what we got time for.
We don't have time for that either.
Dr. Taylor and future doctor. You're gonna be a future doctor.
You're gonna be a doctor, Mackenzie?
Mackenzie probably. She already a doctor, man. She's smarter than half of the doctors I talked to on that campus.
She said, I didn't say any of those things.
But can y'all just share the passage or the contributions y'all will be talking about at the event, and then why people should come to this event next Thursday and hang out with us?
I'm doing the Channing, Chelsea, thank you, my brain. Chelsea Manning chapter, and it's I just think it's going to be dynamic. One, because there's so many narratives in here, and to hear folks' perspective on it, and just a chance to be in community and to talk about like abolition and anti-prison reader, the book. I mean, and also it's just like, I think it's a quite, we just lost Assata Ashe, right? And how many people are pouring out like their flowers. I mean, I think people have always done it, but it's like Mumia is still amongst us. He's still writing, and this is a great way to acknowledge him now and to acknowledge not just him, but like many of the people who are in prison. So I'm excited about being able to be in community, to see who's going to be there, and just to dialogue and to hear other people's perspectives. You know, as an educator, I get to be with students. Some of my students make me smarter, some of them do not. But I am excited to hear like other people's perspectives and takes on it. So, you know, this is an open invitation to everybody.
It was the some of them do not for me.
Yeah, very dialectical about our students.
Mackenzie, who are you talking about, and then why should people come and hang out?
Oh, let's see. I think I'm lagging a bit. Okay. My section is on the Free Alabama movement, which I know I referenced a little today, which I just think it's such a cool, like, modern prison abolition movement. And I think that it has a lot for me of connections to public health, which is my like kind of career interest, and also to labor and all the other like undercurrent themes that we've been talking about with prison abolition. I think that this is really good. This is a really good book to introduce people to this topic, but also to, like I was saying in the beginning, like give you so many different vantage points. I think it'll be a really cool conversation to hear from different people and just be in conversation about the different connections that are running through the book. Really excited to hear other people's perspectives on their sections and just to be able to engage. So I definitely think it's going to be great.
Love it. So listen at on the 30th of October on Thursday, Morehouse campus, the African American Hall of Fame. It's right above the chapel, the big King edifice. And yeah, we'll be there. So come through and come hear more about the book and conversations and the work that people are doing. And I want to thank both of y'all for coming through. Yeah, just adding your intelligence and brilliance and power to this platform. So we appreciate y'all.
Truly, it was great. Thank y'all for coming on.
Thank you for having us. It was lovely. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
So we'll be seeing y'all soon. See you around.
All right.
All right. So, Lord, Amber, how y'all feeling? And I wonder if y'all. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, thank you. The guests were amazing. I could tell they know their work deeply. The analysis was sharp, and I'm super excited about this book. I was trying to get to the Malcolm X chapter right before we got on because there was just so much, but I know that's a book I'm gonna have to dig into deeper. So yeah.
Yeah, I thought the guests were great too. I wish they had stayed on so we could talk to them afterwards, but it was really good. I like a good conversation. I also like that Mackenzie is studying the Free Alabama movement, so I just ran outside to let my dog out. But I love that she's studying that movement because it's one of my favorites, and it's one of the ways I got like involved in prison abolition work and like prison organizing. And I think it's really cool that they have sustained it for so long.
Yeah, definitely.
I was looking for this video because I know y'all probably saw it, but Andy Young and John Hope. Right?
We going into overtime for that?
No, yeah, man, but them they was on Breakfast Club, man. We supposed to do a little, you know, the review.
Did you say iHeartRadio has the CIA link? Like that was
yeah.
the CIA episode of the Breakfast Club. I tell you that. But
yeah.
Oh man. For those who aren't familiar, it's Andy Young and platform guest John Hope Bryant on the Breakfast Club talking about Martin and Malcolm and
just lying
on air, bro. Oh man, the ops get to just talk freely. It's a sad time, except when they come on here, of course. Then he gets pressed and then never talks about it again. So that's always fun. That's why they run from us.
That's wild. Okay.
Yeah, but
I gotta go, y'all.
yeah, wrap us up, Amber. Take us out to the
Thank y'all
breeze.
so much for joining. I'm sorry to disappoint that there were no roster updates. I pretty much have lost all my hoes because of the movement, because I care about my people. So, things are going left, but the folks are getting what they need. And if people want to follow what we're doing,
he step across the line. Habitually. He's a habitual line stepper.
RP the GOAT.
Amber, we don't want to hear nothing about your roster.
You're so funny. Anyways, if people want to follow the organizing we're doing, then you can follow us on Instagram at free_the901.
Yeah. For those who are, like Atlanta's Andrew Young. Yeah, watch that if you want to torture yourself today. Shout out Black Men Build Miami chapter. We're having our screening of Soundtrack to a Coup made at the Citadel Miami. So tap into Black Men Build Miami on Instagram for updates, or you could just look at Made at the Citadel. And enjoy y'all's weekend. Be safe out there. Each of you got any updates? I know you talked about the event, but
we also got the People's Assembly on Saturday at Great Beloved Church. So come through if you're in the Pittsburgh neighborhood and or around. Come through and go with folks. Other than that, man, we out of here, and we appreciate y'all tuning in, staying live in the conversation. Keep the conversations going in the chat.
The book when it comes out.
Like, share, subscribe. Tap into any other programming we have. Saturdays with Renee, Dark and Blue. Some things earlier this week. Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win. Tandy had a good talks, I think. So, and as Jarrett says, and Fred Hampton used to say, peace if you're willing to fight for it. Love y'all. Enjoy your weekend.
Bye.
Remix. 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 Remix.